Cool. Hi, everyone. I already introduced myself, but I'm John. I'm going to give two presentations tonight, very, very short, just on projects that I've been working on over the summer. So the first one is SN1. I'm advocating that we call it Pearl Hub as it doesn't have an internet connection anymore, but we'll see how that goes. It's the Verizon building that's right next to the Brooklyn Bridge. So it's got a really prominent place in the skyline. It basically serves all of downtown Manhattan, anything north of it. So yeah, Chinatown, Two Bridges area, that's kind of where most of the nodes are. It goes up to the East Village area. It goes to Nolita area a little bit. So that's kind of the gist of what's happening. There's this rooftop antenna array. That's where all of our stuff is located. Let's see if we can see my mouse. Right here is where all of our current stuff is. It's kind of the most prominent location on the antenna array because it's the northeast facing corner, and we are being asked to move away from it to try and keep our prices down a little bit. So the project that I've been working on over the summer has been to move all those antennas to a new location, kind of update the infrastructure at the same time. So that's kind of background. Also, if anyone has questions at any point in time, feel free to stop me. Any questions about this? So yes, again, here's the physical representation of the antenna array. So these were the suggested locations of the new antennas that we would be placing. Here's an annotated look at all of the antennas that are currently up there. We have, I don't know, 10 maybe. The new contract has us down to 5 small antennas and 1 big antenna. So that's kind of our goal. We're also asked to move out of the current rack space because they wanted to save that for other customers, and we only need 2 U of rack space anyway here. We don't have any servers or anything that we need anymore, so we can get those out of the way. And then at the same time, we're getting a couple antennas donated from customers that have abandoned them at this site. So we already have reclaimed all of that, and that's all here and ready to be used. Oh yeah, new cable runs as well, because this was probably the hardest part of the whole project. There were only 2 Ethernet cables running between the server rack and the antennas, and those were kind of at their limits, and we wanted to run kind of a higher quality DC cable for power, and then we also wanted to run fiber for higher bandwidth antennas if we need them in the future. So that's kind of what I set out to do. In terms of progress, where we left off last time was that we started a cable pull, and then the cable got stuck inside the conduit, and it was very rough. We eventually got it unstuck with the help of the building electrician and the building people. They were invaluable in terms of getting that. But yes, this left picture is the successful cable pulled all the way up to the rooftop. There was, I think, 200-ish feet of cable. And then the top middle picture is kind of where it comes out of the conduit and then makes its junction up into what's called the doghouse, which is the penetration from the inside to the outside. You can see in the top right where we have duct seal around the holes that we made in order to get the cables to the outside without letting water in. And then the bottom middle is the fiber connection. So we have a little patch panel. So we have 12 fibers between the network rack and the outside that we can use. We're only using 2 right now, so we've got plenty of extras, or if any break, we've got backup options. And then finally, we've got the bottom right picture, which is the little 2U, one is for power and one is for data. That's all that's actually running inside, because this is an entirely wireless setup in the sense that there's no outside connection to the internet. The uplink for this site is wireless, and then all of the antennas are wireless, so there isn't actually any outside internet connection at this site. The next thing that we did was we finished our backup. I guess it's backup at the moment, our backup uplink. So this is a 1 gigabit per second duplex, so 1 gigabit in each direction at the same time, 60 gigahertz link. The caveat to that is that it can go down in the rain or snow, so that's why it's not our primary link. Instead, we have a 700 megabit per second, 24 gigahertz radio. This antenna on the left is actually located at the building next to us on the 26th story, pointed all the way over at the Verizon building. And then this screenshot in the middle is from when we were actually doing alignment a few weeks ago. And then the 2 pictures on the right are the 60 gigahertz antenna over on the Verizon building. Questions?
Use the mic for questions.
Oh yeah, I'll give the mic out if there are questions. Next, we mounted more sectors and moved a couple sectors around. So this is kind of an updated antenna plan in our bottom corner as to where all the final locations of the antennas are as of today. The blue is the only thing missing. That is the AF24, 24 gigahertz antenna that we're going to be moving probably in the next few weeks. Everything else are these little circular sector antennas with the cone-shaped horns, and those are pointing out in a variety of directions and serving all of the original locations that the antennas were pointed. So in the bottom left, we have one of the north antennas and one of the northeast antennas. In the center two pictures, we've got a second north-facing antenna and a second northeast-facing antenna, and then the top right picture is what you can kind of see out from one of these antenna locations. So after all the antennas are mounted, then comes the very tedious process of migrating every single light beam antenna from people's rooftops, connecting from the old antennas to the new antennas. It's similar to connecting to a Wi-Fi network where you type in a network name and a password. So it can be done remotely, but in a lot of these places, this light beam is the only thing providing a connection. So if you mess it up, you lose connection to the site until someone can actually go and visit. So thankfully, Ubiquiti provides this test changes tool where it'll apply the changes for 3 minutes, and then it's a race to have it connected. You have to log in, apply the changes permanently before it'll actually swap back to the antenna before. So that's what I've been doing for the past few weeks. And this is kind of the progress that we've seen so far. We've got 40-ish migrated light beams, and we've got 5 left. 3 of the 5 are over in Williamsburg, so we need to figure out what to do about that, because the current antennas do not have the gain in terms of signal strength in order to reach that far, because it's swapped over from a different type of antenna. So we have to figure something out about that. But in terms of coverage, I feel as if everything's been lining up pretty nicely. These are kind of the natural strongest antennas connected for all of the different light beams, and you can pretty easily see the profiles in terms of where each one is pointed. So that all ended up working out pretty well. And then, yeah, the bottom 2 screenshots. The left one is the scan functionality in the light beams on everyone's rooftop. So you'll push that button and then you'll see which network pops up the strongest, and you'll try to connect to that. And then the one on the right is the overview showing the connection strength and the distance between the links. That's calculated based on, I guess, the delay from one end to the other. I've also been updating the GPS coordinates in all of them, because previously none of these 4 maps were possible because everyone's GPS coordinates were just at the site of the sector antenna, which is the big mesh logo in the bottom left corner of each. So now we have a better physical representation of where everything is. Questions about this? Oh. Yeah, I'll repeat it. I changed all the GPS coordinates. I went and looked up the node number. Yeah, so the question was, did I actually go and update all the GPS coordinates? And yes, I went into Google Maps and copied GPS coordinates out of where I could tell from the I guess, nycmesh.net/map. Probably MeshDB has some fancy way of exporting GPS coordinates, but I couldn't find it, and this was easier. So maybe next time. Okay, so what's next? We need to move the AF24. That's the final antenna that we need to move. There's some discussion about whether we want to move the existing one that's been up there for 10 years or move a new one over and use that instead. We need to finish a couple light beam migrations. So yeah, those Williamsburg's light beams, and then there are a couple first generation light beams that are still out in the wild that have limited frequency connections, so they can't actually connect to the frequencies that we have right now. But the FCC updated their rules, and there's an unlock code that we can apply, but they reset their settings whenever you apply it, so I can't do it remotely or else I'll lose connection. So we need to have people go to those sites, run the activation code, and then they can reconnect, or they should be able to reconnect without issue. We also need to get all the existing equipment down. I've been picking away at it so far, so most of the stuff that's up there now is still actively broadcasting. One of those is a massive 5-foot-tall, 50-pound antenna, so that's going to be a fun project to get down. Hopefully I'll have some extra hands for that. And then there are a number of, because this was one of the first sites in the mesh, the technology has grown and improved over time, especially the meshing between different nodes, say on a block or in a particular neighborhood. And right now, there are some blocks in Chinatown and Lower East Side that are 7, 8 years old maybe, that all have light beams even though they're on adjacent rooftops. And these days what we would end up doing is we would put an Omni antenna on one and then they would all kind of leech off of that one antenna. Or we'd have a couple different uplinks. In other words, it's just a way to optimize and reduce the amount of light beams pointed at SN1 so that we can have more capacity in the future. So that's one of the things that we're going to be working on next. So I've had a number of people helping me on this, and I want to thank everyone, people in the room and people outside the room that have been helping. So yes, thank you everyone. And that's it. Any questions about this project? I got a question in the back.
Thank you for your work on this. This is a pretty substantial undertaking. Definitely a couple of years ago, no one would have known how to even get to SN1, so I appreciate the initiative. Just on a question, I know on the slide about the Wave AP. In terms of what you're hoping to have on it, what is the goal for clients that are going to be on this particular equipment? Where does this fit in?
This fits as a backup link if the AF24 ever has to go down. So this provides us another secondary high bandwidth option to Grand. In addition, it's on a different rooftop from the AF24. So if the power for whatever reason or the fiber link for whatever reason disconnects at 410 Grand, which is where the AF24 is and will continue to live, the 460 Grand rooftop will hopefully still be alive, or at least we have a higher chance of it being alive, in which case the Wave Nano can take all of the traffic. In addition, I think, Matt, you have another 60 gigahertz antenna that is pointed and connected to this, so that would provide an alternate way to get around.
So one of the goals here was to minimize the number of antennas up there, right? Because we do have to pay for it, and they asked us to reduce it. So instead of putting another point-to-point link to Grand Street and using one of those antennas, our thought was this thing doesn't really need to be that rain resilient to get to Grand because it's really intended just to be a backup in case the AF24 just up and dies. So with the Wave AP Micro, it covers almost all of Lower Manhattan so that if we do grow, we have an easy capability to add more 60 gigahertz hubs or big nodes or full buildings without any new infrastructure at SN1.
Cool. Any other questions? Yes, one more question.
About the light beam migration. I'm trying to remember what it was.
This one?
The next one, I think. Yeah. Wait.
You got this one or this one?
I totally lost it.
Lost the question.
Oh yeah, just wanted to make sure that as we visit those sites, the light beam refreshes. That we're definitely like bringing a big stack of Omnis and giving everybody an Omni, right?
That's my
Is
understanding.
that the plan?
Yeah, but I haven't planned any of this light beam only cluster thing. Okay. That's kind of a project for later.
It just seems like we shouldn't visit a light beam only site and not bring them an Omni.
Yeah, I think Sean has done one and added an Omni, so I'm hoping we can keep that trend going.
Olivier is good about when we put support tickets in of identifying these, and he just puts them in the notes of like, please bring an Omni as well. So.
Cool. Anything else? Willard's got one.
Sorry, quick question. Is this now considered a hub, or is this still a supernode SN1?
I think it's a hub, but that's a question for another time.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, cool. That's it for this one. I'm going to context switch over to...
Don't poke the bear.
So the other project I've been working on, and I've been kind of interleaving these two when one is slowed down, is this Olmsted Hub. This is up on the Upper West Side. It's adjacent to the park. It's on a 4-building complex. It's a single 400-unit building among a complex of 3 additional 400-unit buildings. They have a parking lot in between, so they own the land between them. The hope is that we finish this one building, and then the other 3 buildings want service as well, in which case we could have 1,600 units on a single fiber link that we're paying for to connect to a data center, but we'll get to that later. Yeah, this is another site where we're trying something new in terms of 10 gigabit fiber to the home. the idea is that we have a 40 gigabit link to a data center, and then that 40 gigabit link can be shared among the members of the building and hopefully the entire site at some point in time. This is an interesting building as well because it's 400 units, but in two 200-unit towers that are separated by a firewall. So it's one physical building, but they actually have two separate stairwells, two separate sets of egress. They actually have to be treated as two separate buildings other than the basement hallway. So that's been a fun challenge. In terms of progress, we've been working on this, I think the first time I was there was in February. So it's kind of been a long process since then. The initial goal was to get a single floor wired up for fiber. And since the last time I updated in August, I was able to get a budget approval to roll out fiber to the rest of the building. So that's 20 floors in the east wing and 20 floors in the west wing. And yeah, that went well. And we started installing that and actually getting everything physically plugged in. So the things on screen, the leftmost image is I guess a patch box. We found that it was extremely tedious to run cable along the basement hallway, so the fix was to run a single 12-strand cable with 12 strands of fiber inside a single cable to make it a little bit easier. Do that once, and then break that out into the individual cables that then go up to all the different floors. You may note, only 12 strands, but aren't there supposed to be 20 floors? The idea here is that we're going to have patch boxes every other floor and then patch into those. The next picture in the middle is actually doing a test of one of the fibers in one of the floors. So this is the active floor right now, the test floor, floor 15. So it's got a couple extra fibers, and it's actually got a couple Mesh members actively using the service. So that's very exciting. We're trying to validate and make sure that the fiber is actually working after every single time we pull cables and, I guess, have the opportunity to damage a cable that's already there. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to have happened. Everything has at least some sort of signal. I think there might be some bends that I need to go back and try and fix, but we'll get to that later. And then the rightmost picture is actually running the single 12-strand cable along the basement hallway. So it's a 120-foot fish tape that we had to run and kind of worm its way through the yellow flexible interduct and then pull that back. Next photo is of the west wing. So east wing and west wing were very similar, but the west wing we did home runs all the way back to the server rack, which meant every single cable had to actually go through 50 feet of the hallway interduct, which was kind of the hardest part. We can see in the leftmost photo, we're running two cables at once because we wanted to have two cables and a pull line. That's what those three piles are. The idea being we'll have a couple spare fibers that are already run. So if anything breaks for any reason or we need extra capacity in a given area, we'll be able to just pull the extra fiber down and install it there. In the middle is Doug pulling down on the fiber and the pull line to try and get it down to the intermediate point, and then from there we have to pull out 50, 75 feet of slack and then run that along the basement hallway. And you can see Scott and Doug in the rightmost photo actually doing that final part of the pull through the yellow interduct. Thank you, Scott. Okay, next setup. Thanks to Zach for this. We have a dark fiber lease connecting this building all the way to 325 Hudson Street in Lower Manhattan. So that is a data center where we're paying for rack space, and we're also getting, I think, a donated link out to the internet. So the idea here is that we have a set of fibers that gives us a 40 gigabit link between the data center and our apartment building. And over the past couple months, we've actually gotten access to our rack and gotten everything plugged in. We were able to get the fiber plugged in at both ends and actually establish a connection first try, very exciting. And then the top right is Andrew's Node Explorer website, where we can actually see that everything is meshing as it should, in the sense that is that right? Yeah, that the SN1 in the bottom right corner of that graph is actually connecting through Olmsted all the way back through CCNY up in Harlem, and then from there to SN3, which is our current exit to the internet. So eventually we'll have the SN1 325 Hudson internet link turned on, and then that'll be its own exit to the internet. Questions about this? I've got a question in the back.
You can just repeat it.
Sure, I'll repeat the question.
Confusing to someone who doesn't. I want him to repeat it, that this is awesome.
Cool. Daniel says this is awesome. Next thing we started working on was access points around the building to try and get NYC Mesh community Wi-Fi around all the common areas, because this building has a ridiculous amount of common areas. It's got parking lot in the back, it's got a little playground and a seating area in the back. It's got laundry room, music room, gym, training room, common area, so much stuff. So we ended up deploying, I think, 6 access points around the various places, public spaces in the building, and then there's a little bit of carryover from the 3 access points that were already there. We tried to do home runs and then use these hex PoE network switches, which will break out power over Ethernet. So with a single cable, we can actually power and run data to 4 access points at once with a single cable. So very exciting there. And everything's been working fine so far. I think we've seen 10 people connected to the Wi-Fi at any one point in time, and the network switch that we installed at the beginning of the project has been able to handle all the power without issue, so everything's been working fine there. The door people that work in the building also were using their hotspots before this for internet or whatever they needed, so they're very excited about the Wi-Fi now. In terms of what's next, we need to actually get into the building and start getting people to fill out our join form, and then we can schedule installs with them. We need to go back and fix a couple things on the floors in terms of weak signal or increasing increasing the signal strength, mounting the patch panels, that sort of thing. And then, a lot of cable labeling and just general tidying, because it was a mad rush to try and get this done. So that's kind of where we're at. And bigger list of people, because it's been all this year, but yes, thank you to everyone for helping out on this project. That's it. Any questions? Yay.
I would echo Daniel's comments here that this is incredible. It's also worth mentioning that this is, 99.9% done with volunteer labor, which is honestly incredible. So John has probably spent about 1,000 hours on it this year, but you can see in the pictures there that lots and lots of other people have helped. So really, really incredible. I think we've also learned a ton about how to do big buildings and especially how to scope these projects well, right? Because you've run into probably 100 challenges that no one even thought of. And now I think we're going to have a really good kind of template and SOPs for doing this the right way and scoping contractor work and whatnot. So amazing.
Thanks.
All right, I got 2 for you. The west wing is the wing with the home runs back to the rack. If you had to do this project again, would you use an MPO there too?
I'm not necessarily sure I would reuse I don't know if I would reuse the 12-strand cable, because it is an expensive way to do it. I might just choose a different form of conduit that isn't as flexible and that a fish tape runs more easily through. We also found out a little bit late in the process, because this was interleaved with our issues at SN1 and the cable pulls, that cable lubricant makes everything a huge amount easier, and maybe we should have used that here as well. We started doing it partway through and it made things easier, so yeah.
And then the second question is on the hex PoEs, you're powering those all the way, like you're doing Ethernet all the way back to the rack, and you're powering them from the PoE switch in the rack?
That's right. The PoE switch in the rack does 30 watts per port, powers along a 200-foot cable to the hex PoE, and then from there it'll go and power each of the different access points.
Also, third, everyone, that this is a really cool project. I was wondering if you could talk about the process of reaching out to the building and how that went to pick a big building. And I was really surprised when we worked together. You were explaining that you're doing it all for free, but you're hooking them up because they kind of hook you up as having a center. But yeah, so how you approach them, if anything was unexpected coming up with communication, because I feel there's just probably some unexpected contractual things, since this is so unique.
Yeah, this is an interesting question that I have had nothing to do with. I came in when we started needing to design the infrastructure, and I think Brian handled most of the contract signing and negotiation with the building and all of the initial outreach. I don't know how any of that worked. So I don't know, Brian, if you want to come up here and talk about any of that at all in terms of the process of reaching out to Olmsted, or Olmsted reaching out and finding out how to get this working.
From my
I have nothing to say, so I'll give my mic up.
This all started with there's a link on the website from the homepage to building, and people were approaching us from that. And it's the deal is if they can get 50 apartments interested, then we'll pay for doing the backhaul on the building. I think it's an expensive process. I think we need to revise it a little bit. But it took me many years to come up with this idea, because I've been to so many co-op board meetings, and as soon as you start mentioning a price, then they lose interest. If you can present them with something that costs the board nothing, but the individual apartments pay for their share of the install, then it's really easy to get it passed by the board. But yeah, as soon as you mention any cost at all, just any dollar number, then it has to go through a whole process on the board, and it just won't be approved.
Julie, did that answer all your questions, or do you have any follow-ups?
Some of it, like, yeah, I guess, was there, so the building paid for it?
No.
No.
No, we paid for everything.
Yeah. And for reference, this was $25,000 worth of equipment. And then all the volunteer labor, obviously, $0.
But each apartment will pay $290 to connect, and then the 20 or 30 a month donation.
Mm-hmm. Was there any hesitation from the building to let access, or like any reasons that they didn't want it?
As I was saying, the co-op's main thing is to not spend money, the board.
Yeah.
As long as you can come to them with something that benefits the people that live there, which doesn't cost the board any money, then it'll get approved.
Cool. Thanks.
June, I think you had a question, right?
Hey there, just kind of curious. Did you run into any expected or unexpected resiliency challenges in this setup?
Any unexpected what, sorry?
Resiliency, redundancy challenges or whatnot?
Nothing yet.
That's good.
Yeah, the spare fibers I think have been helpful, because we already broke one and we had a second one ready to go. So we don't have to actually bring a splicer up there and fix the cable live in order to get the floor online. So I guess that's one example.
Hope it holds that way.
Yeah, hopefully so. In terms of the roof, I guess it was useful to have two separate uplinks to CCNY. That was during our initial rollover phase. We had a 5 gigahertz light beam and a 60 gigahertz wave LR. And while we were tweaking the wave LR, or while we were getting the wave LR installed, it didn't actually make a connection when we hoped it would. So the backup link was able to take the traffic in the meantime, and we were able to see both sides and then work on things until the high bandwidth link was in place. Yeah. Cool. Other questions? All right, I think we're good. Thank you, everyone. Next presentation is MeshDB, right?
Okay. Whoa, it's all yellow.
Yeah, the recording from the other one has that too.
I have. Let's try that. Oh, that helped. Sweet.
I think I'll start, and then you can take over somewhere around here. Hold on. Yeah, some more crits, really care.
Okay, sure.
You finish out?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, let's do it. All right, just off the cuff. It's not hard. Okay. Do you need me to sort this out?
This one I'm going to mute while you're
Is this one turned on?
so I can mute the questions.
Cool.
What's the names again?
I'm Willard.
Andrew, it's on the slide. Oh, Willard and Andrew.
Yeah. Uh-oh, where'd it go?
It is on the slide.
It wasn't this slide.
We might get kicked out halfway through also, so that's fun.
I'm just vibing. I am just vibing.
It was up there, wasn't
It
it?
was up there. It was working. Maybe somebody jostled something? Did something get jostled?
I mean, he's got like a display multiplex.
Oh, there's a cable.
Oh,
Is there
Jolly,
a cable
something's
unplugged
unplugged
here?
here.
Yeah. You're getting it? There's a HD. I think that's an HDMI that's unplugged.
No, I'm seeing it slow. It looks like this HDMI cable got unplugged.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, we're back. We're so back. Sweet.
You know what? You know what? All right, all right.
Oh my God, he's doing it. He's doing it. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you.
I'm going all the way for it.
Going all the way.
I'm going all the way. Okay. Gotta take that one off your bingo card. All right. Oh my God. All right, well, we're ready, right?
I think we're chilling. Are we ready? Are we good? We're good. Would you like to get started?
All right, everybody, I think we're gonna get started. Cool. So hi, I'm Andrew and this is Willard.
Hello.
And we're here to give an update on how MeshDB has been going. So what is MeshDB? It is a database for tracking information about members and nodes and devices that we have on the mesh and how they relate to each other. The idea is to have a consistent and stable interface for robots and humans to use and to be able to build tools on in a robust way. You might say oh, why don't we have that? Well, we've got a spreadsheet right now serving us well, but it has a bunch of limitations that would be associated with a spreadsheet. So this project aims to replace that and sort of replace all of the functions associated with that. So this is the timeline we pitched to you back in April, and we didn't meet that. But that's okay, we've been busy. So we've been working on plenty of stuff. So yeah, so you can see here, this is commit activity over time. So we had the original presentation, we gave you an update in April, and then we took some vacation, and then we came back.
I was in the woods.
And we did a bunch of stuff. Right, so we've been doing a bunch of stuff recently. We got all kinds of great upgrades, bug fixes, improvements, and we're feeling really, really good today to be able to confidently say, it's ready, it's done, let's start using it.
So,
I mean, we closed 92 issues, right? But you can see, right, the sum here is we started with 40 and we were halfway there in April. And then now we're at 90. So between that time, we doubled the number of issues, but we also closed all the new ones. So, we're here, we're ready.
yeah, we've made a lot of improvements. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. This has been a consistent, dynamic sort of back and forth process, right? As these large projects usually are. We sort of back in April did the best we could with the information we had, and then we learned a lot more. So we find ourselves here now, a bit older, a lot wiser, theoretically. So yeah, I guess to sort of elaborate on that, what exactly have we been doing? Well, we have vastly improved our hosting situation. We've added 3 new servers, soon to be 4, to our sort of like compute infrastructure in the mesh here. Right now they all live at SN3. We're gonna have a new one living at SN10 very soon. And that will let us do things such as high availability, failover, redundancy. We've put a lot of time and effort into making sure that MeshDB will not go down. And if it goes down, we have a backup. So we've put a lot of effort into that. Here you can see myself and Quincy back in, I think this is March, configuring the networking for one of said servers, #PutItOnJohn. In the pursuit of high availability, we've also added a suite of monitoring and observability through Datadog. So that will give us really, really good insights into MeshDB and how it's operating. If there's an issue, if there's anything wrong at all ever, we'll get pinged for it in Slack. And maybe a little more than that if something really bad happens. But yeah, so we've got a lot of great tools around that. We've done a lot of improvements to our UI and our workflow. We have written and then rewritten and then rewritten several forms to make them as good as they can be. We have a great, super robust admin panel that people have already been using, people have been giving great feedback on, and we've been iterating on it. We'll continue to iterate on it. This is a living project. So that's been cooking. We've done a ton of bug fixes, especially Andrew has done so much with like the data validation and correctness of like the spreadsheets. We have done everything humanly possible to make sure that like copying data from the spreadsheet to MeshDB goes as smoothly as possible.
It's at like 98%.
It's
like
it's insane.
I can't do better than that.
It's truly insane.
It's never, we're never gonna get every row 100% perfect, but it's very, very good right now.
I come home from work every day, and he's like, "Hey Willard, can you review this PR for this thing? This one very, very small edge case here." And I'm like, Andrew, stop. So we've done a lot of work on this, and we are rock solid confident in our work. We've also added more tools. Most recently, we've added the SQL Explorer, which lets you run raw queries against our database, right? We've got great search and great interface in MeshDB admin panel, but if that's not exactly what you're looking for, if you can't quite get it to do the thing you want it to do, you can just run a SQL query. And it's super fast, and you can save your queries and share them with others. So that's been a huge asset for finding the nodes that are closest to like the link NYC kiosks or something in like a certain radius, right? We can even replicate the actual like spreadsheet data through SQL, which is really sick. We've also written a ton of documentation for people to learn how to use MeshDB, for people to learn how to hack on MeshDB, integrate with our API, use like our backup tooling, or just to like set up an environment of their own to like mess around with or whatever. So we've got a ton of docs. It's on the wiki. We're working on it all the time. So that's kind of a couple of the big points. Launch. Gotta talk about it. I made the post this morning, and basically what that's going to be is on November 3rd, these things will happen. MeshDB will become the source of information for the mesh. It will replace the spreadsheet. It will, like the join form will point to MeshDB. The map will be powered by MeshDB. OS ticket integration, right? Like all the stuff that the spreadsheet currently does will just be backed by MeshDB. That should be silent for the most part, right? Like we've done a lot of work to make sure that it won't break. So that will happen, and the spreadsheet will no longer be updated. We're gonna try to lock it if we can, just to make sure that like nobody accidentally does anything. It's like, if you wanna do things, MeshDB will be the thing to use. Also with that, old query and then assignment forms and all that stuff will stop working, as I mentioned. But yes, and one thing that I think I forgot to put on this slide is, will there be problems? Yes, absolutely, there will be so many bugs. During this time, we ask for your patience. We have blocked out like the whole week to like address problems, fix bugs, put out fires. We will do everything we can to make this as smooth as possible for as many people as possible. If there are issues, please just tell us, please let us know, and we will work with you. Once that's done, once we're like solid, right, once we've fixed all those issues, we will continue to do bug fixes. We will also continue to do bug fixes. It's on there twice because I know there will be a lot of bugs. We then have, once the bug fixes are done, or maybe in tandem, if we get bored, we will work through the feature backlog. There is a bunch of issues on the GitHub that like didn't quite make it like, you know, under the line for the like launch, but like there's still stuff that we think is important, things that people have requested, things that are cool, things that would be useful, that we'll continue to work on, you know, post November 3rd. If you have anything to suggest, please let us know in the MeshDB channel or open an issue on GitHub yourself. Besides those features, we'll also continue to improve reliability. You know, there's more observability that we can always do, more alerts, more monitors, etc. We will continue to build out our compute infrastructure, right? We've got the servers coming in SN10. Eventually, we also want to get into SN11 as well and have like true, like triple redundant high availability systems, which is like super overkill, but like, you know, we don't want this to break. So I think it's warranted. And then, you know, like Horizon 3, we want to have sort of larger in scope, crazier, cooler ideas, right? We want to, you know, maybe put some work into the map, put some work into the panoramas system once we have bandwidth to do so. And we will field, at that point, requests for features and products and tools and whatever people can think of. So we're very excited for that part. Yeah, let's see. Here's the actual timeline, the sort of like ugly details of the next 2 weeks or so. So October 22nd is today. This is the update. We will start having office hours 7 to 8 p.m. in Zoom, in MeshDB channel, in Zoom on the 28th. If you want to ask us anything, if you want to learn how to use MeshDB, if you have questions, comments, concerns, feature requests, whatever, if you want to learn how to set up MeshDB for development and like add a feature, we'll be there to help you out. This week, we would ask that everybody comes to the MeshDB channel if you have concerns and tell us about them. Sometime next week, we've had interest in like a formal sort of MeshDB training session where we'll like sit down and be like, here are all the features, here's how to actually use the interface. So
if that sounds good, React in the Slack channel so we have an accurate count.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that's like a formal training to like, we'll take you through the UI and the data model and you can ask questions about like, you know, how are these things supposed to be related to each other and what does a good relation look like, what is a bad, you know, there's some complexity there that's not there in the existing spreadsheet, and you know, we just thought it would be good to have like a session. We'll probably record it, but just yeah, give us a React so we can gauge interest. And yeah, this and then next week, fix high priority bugs as they appear, because this is software engineering. Of course, there will be bugs. And then November 3rd, it happens. 8 p.m., which I mean, it's daylight savings, so I think it'll be 7. But anyway. Yeah, we will click approximately 4 buttons and cut over to MeshDB as the thing. During that time, please do not interact with MeshDB. I will put it into maintenance mode. Do not interact with the spreadsheet. We will lock it, and then we will let you know when it's done. We'll try to do that as quickly as possible to prevent any disruptions. And then, yeah, November 4th, the day after, we will have office hours. And, you know, hopefully nothing will break. And if it does, we'll fix it. We blocked out that whole week sort of for just follow-up. And then, yeah, leading into November and December, we will work through that backlog, think about new features, and invite people to collaborate and work on stuff. Because MeshDB has been open source. It's still open source. Here's the repos. Please help us out. If you have coding experience, if you want to learn, if you want to just build a tool that you think will be useful, let us know. You know, show up to the repo, open a pull request. We're always happy to review.
And yeah, if you want help, getting started, right, we've got those office hours every Monday. So, pop in. And of course, if you want to just do it async, you can also just hit us up on MeshDB and do it that way. But yes, this could be you. We have 9 contributors on the main MeshDB repository. You could be number 10. That could be your profile picture. Wouldn't that be cool? Anyway, Q&A. That's about all we had. So we're going to open up to Q&A.
Hello? Is this on? Hello?
Hi.
Yeah. So is that the entire spreadsheet is being shut down because there's like the links tab, and so it's all of that?
All 3 tabs, yep.
And so we'd be switching over to a map that works off the database?
So the existing map will stay, but the code that updates it will pull from MeshDB instead of where it pulls from today.
And how about the XML for Google Earth?
Same thing. There's a KML file that's available. It's linked on the MeshDB website, and that again it pulls from MeshDB instead of the existing tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What about the IP ranges?
The IP ranges spreadsheet is unaffected by this. Totally separate. Somebody get down a mic. Yeah.
I have a question about, I guess, auxiliary spreadsheets, because sometimes we use spreadsheets for, I guess, 165 Broome Street with its 200 fiber connections, or the Parkside Co-ops with its 40 units and its 7 dumbwaiters or whatever. Do you have space in that for MeshDB, or will that continue to be sort of a bespoke spreadsheet for the alternate styles of data recording?
So like, if you're going out on an install and you're like putting a light beam in every apartment or whatever, and you like need some special way to write down and check off which ones have it and which ones don't, like, we're not necessarily trying to get down to that level of granularity of what we're doing. It's only like we're trying to be the canonical source of information for what nodes and installs and people are present on the mesh. If those spreadsheets are performing that function today, I see that as a problem, and they should be consolidated into the main spreadsheet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's good. Probably shouldn't try and fit every possible use case into a single thing and then have bloat beyond.
You can still use a spreadsheet if you like it. Yep. It just won't update the map.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
And that said, I'm peripherally aware of like a few projects to sort of address that use case. We should talk later because I have a few ideas for how to do like sort of batching, right? Like install groups, if you will.
It's also worth noting that MeshDB speaks CSV in both directions, and so like if you're like trying to work on a building, you can like query for the building, dump all the installs, check them all off on your tablet or whatever. Or if you're like signing up a new building and you have a list of tenants, you can import the CSV, and there's wiki pages on all of that. Yeah.
Is this also going to be handling this thing on? Check. Is this also going to be handling your inventorying, or is that just a totally different system altogether?
Yeah, inventory is staying on a spreadsheet. That system seems to work for our needs. I don't see any reason to touch it.
Yeah,
fair enough.
It's like fully separate. I saw a hand back here.
Yes, thanks, John, for your question. Obviously, Grand Street is an example where we are because this is kind of an interesting development. And I know we've worked through some challenges through the way that data is recorded here, especially for the Grand Street residents who aren't really tech savvy. I'm wondering what mitigations have been made for folks who do not have emails and do not have ways that we can reach them by email, and see if what the current status is with working with those inputs.
I can take that one.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll point out that like OS ticket is still in the primary workflow, and it requires an email address, and like that's not good, and in the long term we need to change that for exactly the reason you point out. But on day one, it will still be in the workflow in the same way that it is today. I will point out that MeshDB itself does not require the email address. It's only required like as a part of the workflow. And so you actually can have a member object in MeshDB with a null email address, which might be reasonable in the case of a Grand Street member. I know that we have a lot of tricks right now where like there's like fake emails and stuff. As much as possible when we do the import, we've tried to strip that out so that it's accurate. That like, no, we actually don't have an email. Like So we're not sending emails into the abyss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are ways to, like, you know, if there's like a weird situation and you as a volunteer see this weird situation, you can like sort of get around validation rules if you need to.
So maybe as a follow-up, I'm wondering maybe, especially for the folks, whether it's our contractor here or whether it's other volunteers who might be involved in the Grand Street process here or other buildings where we'll have non-tech literate folks who do not have access to typical means like, tech literate folks do. I'm wondering, does it make sense for us to create a workflow specifically for that? Whether that's a front end that will integrate, bypass the OS ticket just to make that work for these people?
Yeah, let me pitch you on a vision that I have overall for like how this might work, and this is like borrowed from Marg and others. It's like when you click the link on the website right now, it just like immediately drops you into a form that asks you for a bunch of information, right? But I think it would be much better to sort of take you through a series of questions, right? And say like, do you live in this building? Do you live in this building? Are you in this neighborhood, right? Like, through like some basic questions and like, or like maybe even it explains a little bit of how the mesh works and like, this is why we want to know if you have access to your roof, stuff like that. And then based on your answers, you might go to a couple of different places and perhaps, yeah, if you say I live at 410 Grand Street, it sends you to a special form just for Grand Street and like that doesn't require email and it doesn't trigger an OS ticket and stuff like that. So I think there's plenty of room for that after we get things sort of operational. Like after we meet today's status quo and the new tooling, totally happy to talk about that. Yeah.
Thank you, that's great.
Yep.
I would just, again, because I think I say it every time you guys present, I think this is an incredible effort. This project might actually be longer than Olmsted, that's really something. Also, as someone who's never coded and certainly not coded anything as part of this, but has been a part of a lot of production migrations, I would just ask that everybody else, especially installers and people who are doing support like us, be patient. I'm sure we're going to find little, I genuinely don't think that there's going to be any major bugs because, man, you guys have just been beating the hell out of this thing. There will be little weird edge cases, but for everybody else, I would ask for empathy and patience because we can work around those and, it doesn't have to be fixed tonight. And Andrew and Willard and James and many, many other people have probably been up until 4 o'clock in the morning for about 100 nights this year, and they all deserve about a month of sleep after we get through the first week. So thank you guys. This is great.
Thank you, Matt. All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Pizza's still about 15 minutes away. And, so we'll just break out now.